Being a new adventurer in the city with a boss adventurer who has so much pride that he overlooks everyone, you can imagine what Daryl is set to go through in his new city. Following the killing of a great monster who had disturbed the city for about 2 weeks and who had also been a hindrance to the town's best adventure, as then Gashita was unable to kill it but a novice Dario who was, in fact, sent away from inheriting the kingdom killed it. Daryl goes to the Adventure Guild to take on a new mission and he meets Gashita there. The bad blood is obvious, and when the guild leader tells Gashita that he slacked off and Daryl had to do his work for him, the tension gets higher. The guild leader tells Gashita to thank Dario for his help, but Dario could notice the tension and he tells Gashita that he doesn't need his appreciation. He, in fact, thanks Gashita himself with all pride. Gashita takes a mission flyer on the table despite the guild's leader's concern. He takes the paper and attempts to leave the guild. He sees Dario looking at his new and first mission instruction. He peeps at the mission and sees Daryl is going to find herbs. He says that such missions are the best ones for a rank E adventurer, and he walks out of the guild. After he leaves, the guild leader wishes Dario well for his missions and asks Dario to give him his hands. He connects their hands together and changes Daryl's rank from rank E to rank D. He says it's the wish of the gods of war, and since he had saved the city and preserved them from the monster, then he deserves the reward. Daryl prepares to leave for his first mission, and as he is about to leave, he hears Marika's voice from the burglary. She calls out for him and tells him she will be following him for his first mission. He's concerned that she isn't an adventurer and it wouldn't be safe for her, so he tells her not to worry. She claims he is new and he doesn't know about the forest, plus it's a great way for her to appreciate him for saving her, so he should grant her the honor of seeing him off. Reluctantly, he allows her. As they walk towards the deep side of the forest, he tells her he thinks she should return to the village. He claims that the reason adventurers are sent for such missions is that such missions are unsafe for normal citizens, so she should please return. She tells him citizens get to that side of the forest too and that only adventurers are commissioned to do is probably to go to the deep part of the forest or the unsafe parts. Also, they are commissioned adventurers to help with the difficult jobs. Upon hearing about the tough works of an adventurer, Daryl is burdened. He wonders if he will have to do all of those jobs. They get to the mountain that leads to where the herbs are. Marika confesses that she misses climbing the mountain, but he asks her to return home again. But she refuses. She eventually opens up to him and tells him she had always wanted to be an adventurer so she could help her city, but she is unable to do so. He figures the reason she was in the forest the day he found her was to help her city. He asks, and she tells him an older neighbor was sick and needed herbs. They tried to cajole Gashita to get the herbs for her, but he refuses, which is why she has to go for the herbs herself, and she finds herself being chased by the monster. They climb towards the other side of the mountain, and she apologizes for overburdening him, but he isn't concerned about that. As they get to the mountain, she asks him to hold her, but he refuses. She says it's better that way so that they do not lose each other. He asks her if there is another way, and she says the only way is that he hugs her again. He refuses to hug her, so he, with no other choice, accepts to hold her hand. She holds his hand happily as she drags him towards the forest, singing a happy song to signify her joy. They eventually arrive at the forest, and when they get there, she tells him they should get to work immediately as they start cutting herbs. He looks at the herbs, and he feels Marika is cutting off the wrong one. He cuts off the one he thinks is correct, but she tells him it's the one with him that is wrong. He cuts off the correct one after she teaches him how to cut it off, claiming that if he cuts the 3 leaves, it would stop the herb from growing again. After they finish with the herb they attempt to pluck, she tells him she would like to pluck another herb. She carries a very big tree by herself and hits it on the other side of the forest. The stomping on the ground gives Dario goosebumps as he sweats from his head, wondering how strong Marika is. While she attempts to pluck the second herb, she suggests they pluck, she sees the footsteps of a deer. She calls his attention to it and tells him they can kill a deer for dinner in the village. He realizes she isn't as weak as he had presumed she is, and he asks her if she is actually too weak to kill the monster that had attacked her. She tells him that she is too scared to attack it, and that's why he is her guardian angel and savior. She tells him she needs a favor from her savior. He asks her what she needs. She tells him she wishes that he would stop calling her Miss and remove the pleasantry behind her name. She says when he calls her Miss, she feels like they are strangers. He tells her that they are indeed strangers, but she insists he removes the Miss behind her name. He struggles to call her Marika while drawing all of the syllables of the words in his mouth. He eventually calls her Marika but couldn't stop himself from adding Miss behind it. He mistakenly adds Mr. before her name, and she gets angry. She calls him wicked for calling her Miss again, and they get into an argument. She struggles with him and hits him repeatedly. So, to send her off from him, he lies that there is a deer behind her. She turns to check the deer, and coincidentally, they see a deer there. He is even shocked that his joke got real. He looks at the deer, claiming that the deer has a very nice and cute face. A penny for his thoughts, because just as he gives the deer that compliment, the deer gets violent. The deer violently jumps toward the other side of the forest, and he protects Marika. It turns out the deer is actually in a fight with a monster. They watch as the deer fights the monster, and Dario comments that the deer is stronger than the monster. After watching the scene for a while, Marika tells him it's time for them to kill both animals so they can take them to the village. They bring out their individual swords and kill them. Upon arriving at the village, Marika broadcasts the good news that Dario killed the animals. She lays the animals on the bench and says that although their mission was just to get herbs, but Dario found the animals and killed them with his skills. As the village hypes Dario up, Gashida arrives with his adventure flyer in his hands. He sees the way everyone is celebrating Dario, he squeezes his flyer, and his face. He throws the flyer away and he runs away embarrassingly. The flyer flies to the villagers, and they all see that the mission Gashida had taken was to kill the black monster he had killed. He comments that there is fire on the mountain. He spends days and months in the village, and he eventually gets used to the life in the village and he's loved. He says that he doesn't feel pestered to live, and that he thinks he will be fine there. He goes to the Adventurer Guild one day, and he sees Gashida coming out of the guild. Gashida stops, and he sees him as if he's planning his revenge. He walks nearer to Dario and he hits Dario on his shoulder, but guess what? He falls instead of Dario. He walks away angrily, and Dario comments that he is going through a lot. Indeed, he is going through a lot. Dario gets to the guild, and he meets Marika, who welcomes him. She tries to ask him if he would love to have a bath or eat, but he concentrates on the guild master which he had visited in the first place. He notices the guild master is disturbed and asks him what's wrong. So, the master tells him he is concerned about Gashida and he thinks Gashida is going through a lot. He says that's not far-fetched as Dario has taken over about 2 of his missions. Dario says it's not the guild master's fault but his, but the master tells him he isn't too concerned about that but a bigger evil. He tells him that a Blaze Death Scythe is in town, and that the Death Scythe is much stronger than any of the monsters Dario has ever killed, and none of them could kill the monster except Class C adventurers. So, the mission has been taken over by a neighborhood guild with Class C adventurers. However, they had brought them a flyer to warn them of the evil, and Gashida saw the flyer. So, when Gashida decides, but he decided to fight the monster alone. Marika is concerned that Gashida may lose his life, but her father tells her it's not possible as a group of adventurers have surrounded the monster, and Gashida won't get nearer to it. At that moment, Marika remembers that if Gashida goes to disturb the job of the adventurers, it may become a nuisance and affect their guild. So, she advises that they find a way to bring him back. Dario volunteers to go to the forest and bring him back. Marika asks to follow him, but he says he would like to do the mission alone. As he's about to leave the house, Marika gives him an anti-venom in case he is poisoned by the monster. As he gets to the forest, he feels a bad aura. He remembers that when he was working at the Demon Kingdom, he had learned that such an aura shouldn't be ignored as it would lead to more evil. He walks towards the other side of the forest, and he sees a clear way. He figures the group has been killed, and he wonders what's going on. He sees Gashida running towards him. He sees the monster chasing Gashida. As Gashida tells him to run away, he stands to fight the monster. But he notices the monster isn't attacking him but Gashita. The monster goes after Gashita, and Gashita tries to throw an arrow at it, but his arrow bounces back. Dariel jumps to hit the monster. He penetrates the monster's body, but he gets the monster angry. The monster uses his tail to attack, and it breaks Dario's sword into pieces. Dariel has just two choices, either to hit the broken sword or slash it on the monster's body. He decides to do the two at once, and the piece of sword enters the monster's mouth and slashes it from inside. After the monster dies, Gashita collapses, and it turns out he has been poisoned. Dario gives him the antidote and also takes an herb from the forest and squeezes it on his injury. He tells him he had learned about herbs while working on his missions. They both rest for a while. The following day at the guild, Gashita visits Sen-caused Ariel brother. Marika tries to stop him, but he insists he has realized Ariel is his brother, and he can't wait to recover and learn under his brother. While looking at them, he remembers his past life and wonders if the four generals are still fighting the hero. The generals are shown. They had just lost another fight with the hero, and one of them says it's because their new assistant didn't tell her the heroes have employed another spearman. They fire the assistant, and another of the generals suggests that they should re-employ the former assistant that they had fired. She remembers how Dario was good to her and how he ensured they are fine, and suggests they re-employ Dario, but Bathsheba starts fuming with anger. He refuses the suggestion. At the village, Dario wonders that the generals are